Sorry. Yes, that's
Hmm.
fair. I'm sorry. I just coughed, and as soon as my coughed, my computer popped up and said virus is detected.
And here we pick up where we left off last week. Hope you enjoy.
Sorry. It's perfect. Um, no, that's fair. I mean, it's not. Some things can be enjoyable, but there's nothing. We're talking about
Yeah.
immersion.
Mm,
This is
yeah.
not immersion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of immersion, maybe other stuff. I don't know. I think I still haven't figured it out yet. We're
Yeah.
almost we're,
But see,
we're almost done, and I don't know what we're talking about.
um, well, so do you have an example of another thing like that? That's that type of thing where like
Yeah.
it's
Another
where
thing
the
that's just rough.
immersion is ruined.
Yeah, the game just is constantly pulling you out of it. Man, so there are a lot of games that are just so buggy and glitchy that the game tries its best to pull you out, but there's the bugs and glitches are so funny that I enjoy them. They wind up not breaking. They break. But the two definitions of immersion that we've given. The definition as you've defined it is it breaks my immersion in that way. But it's so funny that I find myself enjoying the bugs and glitches, and so it doesn't break immersion as I've defined it. Two good examples of games like that are The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Cyberpunk 2077. Rife with bugs and glitches, but they're just so much they're fun bugs and glitches.
Ah man, I'm gonna fight you on that because okay, the second one, Cyberpunk, that was a travesty. Like it's come to a point now where it's a playable game and it's enjoyable and there's lots of good stuff about it. But I mean, if you were playing that game from launch date to the first month, you were upset. You just were.
Okay, so
Um,
and I'm
you
gonna
just
say
were.
this. I must have got lucky personally. In my personal experience with the game, there was only one glitch that could have been considered game breaking, but it was the funniest one of the lot. And so like I didn't come across that. Personally in playing. This was the only thing that was a game that would have been considered a game breaking glitch. And I laughed for like I paused the game because I was laughing so hard and I couldn't keep playing for the laughter. It was I was running down a certain bridge, and if you run down a certain bridge, there's like a 20-foot span within that bridge. That and I this was repeatable for me, and then they patched one of the patches removed this, but this was repeatable for me. I could do it every time, running down a certain point in the bridge. If you then jumped while you're at that point in the bridge, um, uh, and Dark Souls still has something like this in the bridge in the Pain and Variendo. If you jumped at the right spot in the bridge, it catapulted you off the bridge, threw you almost a mile down the river, and you landed in the river and you were swimming around.
Yeah, I mean it's hilarious.
Yeah, and that was the only game like in quotes game breaking glitch that I personally came across in Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I mean, like people that I knew couldn't even download the game properly, and they
Yeah.
had problems everywhere. But that's beside the point. I will fight you on Skyrim though because yes, I mean like it has any game of that magnitude is going to have bugs and glitches, but I never ever felt unimmersed from that game at any point.
Well,
Never once. It's essentially a perfect game. It's essentially perfect.
okay. So do you want to know the only game that, other than loading screens, because old games you had to have loading screens. So I will forgive any game made before the year 2005 for loading screens. Um, uh, actually, Skyrim has loading screens. It was made in 2011, and I can forgive Skyrim. So there you go. Let's crank it up to 2013. Any game with in-game loading screens, not initial startup loading screens, but any game with in-game loading screens. And I don't know, but Dark Souls has them in 2000 16 in-game loading.
Loading screens are fine. If you're on a system, you're not going to have an absolute
Yeah.
banging graphics card, and you're not going to have it. Not everyone has full tapeless drive, so it's fine.
Yeah, I guess
A lot of
there we go. I'll put it this way. I think it's neat when games come up with creative ways to avoid loading screens, but I forgive loading screens. Loading screens don't break immersion for me. But so for me, there's only one game that, not counting things like crashes or I die and it was a fair death, but the fact that I died made me angry because I hadn't saved in a long time and I lost my progress, which isn't a thing that happens in games anymore. You kids today don't know how well you have it. Yeah. So other than things like that, there's only one game that I never ever lost my immersion on the game itself. Only one game. And if that's what if that is the rubric for being a good game, then that would make this officially the best game ever made.
Okay.
King's Quest VIII: Mask of Eternity. Made in 1998.
That's a really good candidate. I want to disagree with you because only because I didn't get into it like you did, but that's not a good enough reason to not.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting what you're saying. It's a good game. It's a shockingly good game.
It's far from being my favorite game.
For its time, it's incredible.
It's probably my favorite game of 1998.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's a game where, I mean, yeah, there's complete. When we think about the real world, that's an example of what I was saying earlier. Nothing of what's in that game is realistic. It's like it's not a high fantasy game. It's a fantasy game. And like you're killing skeletons that are attacking you and ridiculous things. There's a swamp witch that's essentially like a giant snake slug thing.
So some people, because of the presence of so many magical or fantastic things, creatures and such, some people there's an argument to classify it as high fantasy. Because some people who take such a strict definition of low fantasy that it's just low fantasy must be realistic per our world, just in a world that isn't ours. I think that's a little stringent and retarded, but
it teeters on the edge. I don't think it's quite high fantasy. It kind of teeters on the edge for me. It's a point that doesn't matter, but
I agree with you. I'm just saying there's an argument either way.
But no, that's a great game. Things are ridiculous. Things are fantastical. But I mean, there's never a point where you're like, well, that wouldn't happen. I mean, you're like, oh, that cool that happened. That's the point. That's the immersion point. When something happens that would never happen in our world, you don't just stop and go, that was stupid. So that's a good example. Since you're moving on, you seem to be slightly moving on to things that are good now.
I wasn't even thinking.
No.
Yeah,
that's fine. I will just talk.
So, but by the way, I have to throw this out there. Here's how fine this game did have some suspension of disbelief required, like everything has to. I'm gonna give you an example of required suspension of disbelief for that game, because it did not break immersion, but this was also not realistic, and I would say, even by world realism, that is the world of King's Quest, that this was probably outside of the realm of realism even for that world. In the book for the game, it tells you the dimensions of your jumps based on what kind of jump you're doing. And this is where suspension of disbelief comes in, because they made the statement, a standing or walking jump will get you will make your jump will be 4 feet up and 7 feet out, I believe they said it was. Sure. Your backflip takes you 6 feet up and 4 feet back. And your running jump takes you 6 feet up and 30 feet out.
Yeah, that's what I do when I jump.
Yeah. So let's just say, like, not realistic at all, even I'm sure by the world standards, but that's where suspension of disbelief comes in and still allows it to be a near perfect game.
After you do that 2 or 3 times in the game, it's just the rules of the game, and it stays believable. Okay. This is kind of I don't know. I feel kind of lame for picking this as something that I think is so perfect, just because I feel like anytime you pick a AAA title and say this is the best game, it's kind of lame.
Mm-hmm.
But how I kind of think of immersion, so for me, immersion is almost always single player games, single player adventures, single player campaigns inside games, because that's when I can actually get lost in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So like an example for me is I adore Dark Souls 3. The game is uh,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It's a
Mm-hmm.
fantastic game. Um, I can remember a lot of moments where I didn't even feel maybe immersed in the game. Maybe there's some parts where I was like, oh man, and or just like this is dumb or this is stupid. And maybe I felt less of it. But I mean, I have specific memories of just dialed in full immersion moments, like fighting. Um, oh my goodness, I wasn't ready to talk about Dark Souls, and I didn't have this locked and loaded. The hidden, the optional, arguably hardest boss in
Nameless
the
King.
core game. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So fighting the Nameless King, I remember having moments of just like complete and total, like the moment that the reveal, the second phase of the boss fight, um, was more like holy crap to me than any other boss in the game, and that's a great moment of immersion. But the only game I've ever played that I felt that the entire way through, and it was the first time a game had ever made me feel that level of immersion, feel that immersed, and feel that perfect, was the original Uncharted
Mm-hmm.
on PlayStation 3. Um, it's it's perfect at what it does. And the reason why I think it's a great example for this is that you think about, okay, so you have your it's a lot of over the shoulder shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not realistic. You can take an obscene number of shots. You can heal. You can do stuff that's ridiculous like that. You survive things you shouldn't survive. You live from falls and explosions that would have killed anybody, and and let's be honest, the way he gets around the cliffs, the parkour thing he does, is absolutely impossible.
Mm-hmm. Now,
There's not a human being in the world that can do what he does for as long as he does it and as often as he does it, and then jump up and be like, "Yeah, time to shoot some people." No one, there's not a human being alive that can do that.
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, in this world
Mm-hmm.
where there are things happening that are impossible,
Mm-hmm.
I never ever once felt removed from that game, ever, because they introduced the rules. These are the rules. They made them believable. They made them consistent, and they made it to where you were constantly engaged. There were things happening that were impossible. There were
Mm-hmm.
things happening that made no sense at times, technically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is the perfect game in terms of immersion. And I think even later on in the series, while they had a lot of those high moments, every other game past that didn't have the same level for me in one way or the other. That game was perfect.
Okay, so let me. I'm gonna have to throw out something. We're thinking about if for the context of breaking immersion and things like that. Uh, Uncharted was fairly close to perfect. The first Uncharted game was very close to perfect. Per the PS4 re-release as the Nathan Drake collection, I think it's called. As it stood on PS3, there was one thing in the game. I believe it only happens like 3 or 4 times in the game, but it removed me from the game every single time it happened. And that was in order to make here's a log you have to cross. In order to make progress across the log, you have to balance your Nathan Drake using the 6-axis controller. They removed that for the PS4 release.
Yeah, thank God.
And and that pulled me out of the game every time it happened. But if I'm playing playing Uncharted 1 on the Nathan Drake collection on PS4, where that does not happen, then I'll agree with your statement of it being a near perfect game. On PS3, from an immersion standpoint, but on PS3, the 4 times that you had those, it pulled me out each time. I hated that.
I think I disliked it too.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I still think it's perfect. I still think it's the perfect game, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll settle with you. Um, I'll settle with you on the point that the game was made better in the remastered for PS4 by taking it out.
Hmm.
I'll definitely handshake with you on that because it is made better because of that.
Oh yeah, and
But
also
but
that
it's
being
still
in the game.
nothing in that
Hmm.
moment playing the original game on PS3,
Hmm.
me and you sitting there on both of us on the top bunk of our bunk bed at 18 and 16 years old, staring at our very small tube television, like absolutely being blown away by this video game for the entire time we were playing it is
Hmm.
still just like one of my favorite memories of video games of all time is just discovering this game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. Here was our video game experience, even with PS3. We got Skyrim for PS3 when it released. Got Skyrim on
11
PS3.
11 11, never forget.
Our television was so bad. One of the original first puzzles in the game that you come across is when you make it into um, not Riften.
Whiterun.
No, the little town before Whiterun.
Oh,
Crap. Oh well, you make it in there, and the town that they tell you to go to see the Jarl in Whiterun, Riverwood. Riverwood.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You go to Riverwood, and you and then you see the Riverwood trader, and he says, "Hey, go get my claw back." And so you get the claw back, and then there's a puzzle on the claw. You look at the claw. It's not even a real puzzle. You look at the claw, and it says top moth, next owl, next bear, or whatever the order
yeah.
is. We couldn't solve that puzzle. We had to guess because our television was so bad we couldn't see the symbols on the claw.
Yes.
We eventually brute forced our way through the puzzle, but it was
Yes.
pretty rough.
Yeah, and that's how we played pretty much. Well, yeah, pretty much every game for forever, which doesn't matter when you're on
Hmm.
the Sega Genesis or even the PS2. But when graphics really took that hyper leap for PS3, it didn't help.
Yeah. And the thing is, we
But
did
yeah,
we did have a TV that was of good enough quality in the living room that we could have hooked up to, but we weren't allowed to play video games in the living room. It had to be in our bedroom.
yeah.
Mm.
By the way, this timestamp is like again 16 and 18 years old towards the tail end of it, still doing that.
Hmm. Well, not in 2011, but yeah.
Well, no, 2011 would have
Hmm.
been a different age for both of us,
Yes.
but still.
Mhm.
But yeah, um, yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll still stand by Uncharted, the original release. Like, talk. I mean, and I get it. It's kind of lame
Hmm.
to be talking about an actual system selling game as me saying this is perfect for the conversation. That's kind of lame, but it's the first thing I think of. It's great.
Well, I mean, Destiny, that was a system selling game. In that they made a special system, a special PS4 just for Destiny. But the original Destiny, up until the expansions, and I never played any of the Destiny expansions, but Destiny 2 is basically the quality of Destiny 1 with the expansions, and Destiny 2 has expansion. Yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. But Destiny, I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't that great. So just being a system selling game doesn't have to mean it's amazing.
I think it came.
Me too.
Oh, I don't. Hey, I am. I don't want to tangent about this, but Destiny was one of those games that I was disappointed in because you talk about like who's making it and what they'd made before, and like we're gonna take all of our experience from making Halo and we're gonna make this game. And I played it for a few minutes and I was like, I don't care about this. I know you were into it, and that's great, but it's
Hey,
something
okay.
I never got into Destiny.
If we're talking about suspension of disbelief going a little bit too far, and breaking immersion because you just can't suspend your disbelief that far, we can't talk about that without talking about Halo. Let's talk about how in Halo you take the standard assault rifle, the battle rifle, or is the battle rifle the 3-round burst or the assault rifle? Either the automatic rifle, I mean. Whatever. You take the standard automatic rifle, and even shooting, like taking semi-auto shots. So lining up and going pop, 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 pop. Those bullets just fly wherever they want to fly, anywhere outside of 10, 15 yards. And then you have, and even if you do get all hits, you have to empty an entire magazine into someone to get a kill. Like, I don't like Halo.
No, I don't either.
It's bad.
I don't like Halo at all. I think the only time that we ever liked Halo was playing Halo
Playing
campaign on the original Xbox. Was it Halo 2?
I was thinking, yeah, that was fun, but it was really fun. My only truly enjoyable experience with Halo was on our cousin's 360 playing Halo 3 split screen together.
That was fun. That was fun. I'll give it that. We had for a short amount of time we had an original Xbox that we played a lot, and I don't know if we borrowed it. I don't think we ever owned it.
No, we did. Chris gave it to us. Our other cousin.
I think it was. I can't remember if it was Halo 2 or Halo 1 now. I'm struggling. But I mean, that was fun. Playing the campaign's fun. It's a fun campaign. It's multiplayer I couldn't care less about, but it's a fun campaign.
Hey, Tyler. There are a lot of Xbox players yelling and screaming because Halo was released for PC. The new Halo games were. They said no, that's our game. It's an Xbox game. It took Halo almost a year to be released on Xbox. It started off as a PC exclusive.
Yeah.
So it's not an Xbox game. It's actually technically a PC game.
I don't understand people who are exclusively Xbox. I'll never get it. I get wanting both. I want both. I'd play both. That'd be great. It's fantastic. Man, I'll never understand Xbox exclusive people. I just don't get it.
I won't understand any exclusive people. Okay, so there is no the two things that are the most anti-consumer in video games. There's two things. Nothing is more anti-consumer than these two things in video games. Microtransactions and exclusive not console exclusive, but system exclusives. I understand some things have to be PC exclusive because you need 1,000 million buttons to be able to play the game, and it's really hard to do that on console. I get that. It's just by necessity that some things are PC exclusive. I wish it were possible for those to be on console. I'm not going to say, haha, I can play this and you can't, but sometimes it's just necessary. But to say, I am going to make my game for PlayStation and you Xbox queers can't have it. This is Xbox only. If you own a PlayStation, too bad. It's stupid and ridiculous.
I think it's a good idea. I really do. Because companies are, between Sony and Microsoft, you're trying to come out with something that's going to sell your system. I think it sucks for...
If your system can't go on its own merits, it's not worth getting.
Well, that's the thing. That is officially its own merits.
So it's like no, because if I can't look at this and say, this is this game is available on Xbox and it's available on PlayStation. This game is available for both. So now I'm not saying I'm picking this system because it has this game that I want to play. Because how retarded is that to say, okay, or like the next 3 Call of Duty games are going to be available on everything. Then after that, Sony will have to negotiate something with Microsoft because Microsoft bought Activision. So now Sony's going to have to negotiate something with Microsoft to get permission to get Call of Duty on PlayStation after the next 3 games. That's retarded and ridiculous. To say it because imagine this, like, man, like say you're deciding between a whatever the newest Xbox is, the Series X, I think, or the Series S, I don't know what it's called, the newest Xbox, the one that looks like a refrigerator. You're trying to decide between that and a PlayStation. You're like, man, the Demon's Souls remake is a system seller for me. I absolutely want to get that, but all my friends have Xbox and these multiplayer games that I want to play with them. They don't have cross-platform. So if I get a PlayStation, I can't play these games with my friends. That should never be a decision that the consumer should be forced to make. It should be. Look, this game is available for this console. This game is available for this console. This game is available for both consoles. Okay, so now the selling point for the console is. Yeah, the selling point for the console is the games, and also system selling games don't work for companies anyway. Did you know that every single PS4 that Sony sold, they sold at a loss? They didn't make a penny. They lost money on the PS4s. They didn't sell the exclusives to sell PS4s. They sold PS4s to sell the exclusives.
No, they sold the systems at a loss for constant down the road sales in all of their other venues. It's the same reason why Amazon sells their Fire Tablet as a loss, because they're going to sell a ton of random merch to people shopping their site from their Fire Tablet.
That's what I said.
No, I know, but that's the right move.
Well, it's the right move in today's market. But the market is wrong, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying cut, but I will say this though. I was really contemplating trying to get a PS5 and getting the Demon's Souls remake. I've decided against it because I'm done buying exclusives. I know one person doing it isn't going to change the market, but I'm making a stand somewhere. I'm not buying exclusives.
So here's the thing. Here's the reason why. The market is not wrong. The market is functioning exactly as a free and open market should. Therefore, here comes the tangent. Daggone it, we really hit this one. The entire concept of saying every system should sell every game. What you're getting at, right? Every system should sell every game.
With the exception of games that cannot function on a different system.
But in today's day and age, with them operating on essentially the same software, same hardware, very similar.
What I mean is any game that can run on PlayStation can run on Xbox.
Correct.
Thousands of games cannot run on either console that can run on PC. That's what I'm saying.
But what you're saying is between the Xbox and
Xbox and PlayStation, and also lots of
games that can only be purchased,
and also lots of games that can't run on Switch, but that's different too.
Or we'll just talk about those two because they're the same level of software, the same level of hardware. The concept of saying they should not have any exclusives should all be equal. You get where I'm already going for you?
Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that.
Hold on. I'm gonna pause you. Yeah. I'm actually gonna pause this. I have to go get a baby. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm technically back.
Okay.
I'm holding a child.
Ah, yes. So here's the thing. I don't think companies should be required not to have exclusives, because that would break the free market to say you're not allowed to do that. I don't think they should be forced not to have exclusives. But there are two reasons why there are console exclusives. And it's actually all Sony's fault. Here's why I say that. Microsoft has expressed the kind of the same things that Microsoft's done plenty of anti-consumer things too. So I'm not letting Microsoft fully off the hook, but Microsoft has expressed the similar things to what I'm saying, and they actually because they made a statement that they would be willing to do with other systems with other companies what they're doing within their own company. There are several games that are like would have been Xbox exclusives, like places had deals with Xbox, but then Xbox had put up a thing that said that anything available on Xbox will be available on PC, and it doesn't work. It's like you think, oh, because they're all owned by Microsoft, it just makes sense. Microsoft owns Windows, Microsoft owns whatever. The thing is, it's those games are made available by Xbox onto Steam or whatever, and they're made like it's like Xbox is the one. Xbox makes a portion of the game sales when that happens. So like Xbox games, if an Xbox game is available on what would have been an Xbox exclusive is available on Steam, it's just instead of Steam getting their 45%, they get 40%, and the other 5% goes to Xbox for loaning them for letting them use their exclusive. And then of course Steam has deals with Microsoft for things like Windows and stuff, but Microsoft has expressed willingness to do the same thing with other stuff. But it said hey, we would do the same thing with Sony. Allow our exclusives to be made available on on PlayStation for that same thing, instead of Sony would get. Normally, Sony would get 30% of any game, 34. Say I think it's 40% of any game sold on their platform. But they would but they can have our exclusives on their platform, and instead of doing 40%, they get 35%, and we get the other 5%. So then we'd be willing to perfectly reciprocate that, make their games available on our platform and give them 5%, make our games available on their platform, they give us 5%, and Sony refused to work with them on it.
Of course they did. It's the perfect decision, and they should not make any other decision, and I'll tell you why. Everything that I'm thinking about from this point, so this is a cringy statement, I'm just saying where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I run a multi-million-dollar business. That's my job. That's what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
The number of things that I have to take into account when it comes to other people being able to sell my stuff as a reseller, essentially, mm-hmm. There's a reason why it will always be shut down, and for one reason. It's the same reason why Sony's shutting it down. Of course Microsoft wants to do this. They're losing the console race. Of course they're doing this. They want access to Sony's exclusives because look at Sony's exclusives compared to Microsoft's exclusive. Yes, you have Halo, and let's go outside of Halo. Gears of War. Who's buying an Xbox for Gears of War? Virtually no one.
Because it's available on PC.
Yeah, exactly. Well, besides that, no one's going to buy an Xbox because it comes with Gears of War. Thousands and tens of thousands of people bought an Xbox because it came with Halo. How many people want to play PlayStation exclusives? God of War, Uncharted.
Garbage.
The original God of War 1, 2, 3, Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you think they're garbage, you can literally jump off of a roof.
Okay, so I agree.
Directly off of the roof.
I agree with the statement you just made.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
they want access to. They want access to the entire discography, if you will. I don't know the right name. Right?
Sony already sold those games to Microsoft. All those games are available on PlayStation Plus on PC. Every last one of them.
On PC, are they available on Xbox? Are they allowed to make them on Xbox? And you know the answer to this.
Yes, they are. Because they
are not.
Yes, they are. Because Microsoft is allowed to do that. Microsoft only puts it on PC because the Xbox can't handle effectively running two consoles at the same time. If Microsoft made a console that could handle that, then yes, they could.
But no. It's a completely different set of licensing to allow it for this.
It's licensed. It's licensed. PlayStation Plus, PlayStation Now. Sorry, because I looked it up. Is licensed to Microsoft. Microsoft is allowed to host PlayStation Plus. They're just physically incapable of doing it on Xbox. But
No, so this is an actual real thing going on that's been going on the entire time. There are separate licenses for one thing versus the other, and Sony won't allow them to be on the consoles because these are their console selling games. It's not just a PlayStation Now library. There are
Sony
specific
signed
games that are specific ones.
Sony signed an agreement 2 years ago that would have allowed on Xbox because they thought at the time that Google Stadia and other game streaming services, the Steam streaming service that they came up with for a little bit, they wanted to nip that in the bud and make sure that couldn't happen. It was longer than 2 years ago. It was 3 years ago, I think. That was when more games started to become cross-platform. That was when if it were possible, PlayStation Now would have been available on Xbox. It's just physically impossible because the Sony and Microsoft banded together to nip Google Stadia and other streaming stuff like Google Stadia, Steam. What's it even called? I don't know what it's called. The Steam service where you can just get whatever, because PlayStation Now was available in that Steam service, which completely eliminated the need to buy a PlayStation when that was half the cost. And I guess the two of them signed the agreement. They drafted an agreement. If it were physically possible to run PlayStation Now on an Xbox, Microsoft is allowed to do it.
So we're starting to talk about two different things now. Okay. What I'm saying here is when you're talking about exclusives, excuse me. Okay, so that's them trying to not let that Google thing happen, and thank God, because it's stupid.
Yes.
That's fair. That's fine. That's the realm that I'm talking about is all the business decisions that were made up until this point, specifically because, and you're talking about system selling stuff. So what you're talking about is a world we're coming into now, but to avoid this kind of nonsense, is they're basically they will eventually have to be rid of system selling games. What I'm saying is the past, 40 years of video games, the only concept around keeping individual companies afloat were exclusives. Keeping them afloat over something else was exclusives. This gap narrowed and narrowed and narrowed as you got into the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox 360.
Other than due to hardware limitations, which is why some things are available on PC, until the Super Nintendo, there were no exclusives. Everything that was available on other than because of hardware limitations and games that were specifically made by a certain company. So like if Nintendo made a game, they only released it on the NES, so you couldn't get Mario on the, I almost said the CZ75. That's a pistol.
But what you're about to say is the definition of an exclusive. The Nintendo was the poster child for exclusive games.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, sure. If Sony makes a game, okay, so I guess I'm not upset at the console companies for allowing exclusives, I guess, and for making their games, and Crash Bandicoot was made by Naughty Dog, which is owned by Sony America, right? And so, yeah, sure, make Crash Bandicoot PlayStation exclusive, even though it's not now. The new Crash games are all on PC, and Crash Remastered is on PC, and it's also on Xbox. But anyways, and Crash Racing, the remake, is also on Xbox and PC. But that's completely beside the point. That doesn't matter in the slightest bit. But so yeah, sure. When you make a game, make it for your system. That's fine. And also, if a company makes a game and says, I'm going to make a game for the Xbox, sure, that's technically fine. I'm not saying it mustn't be done. I'm not saying it's a bad business decision to do that. I'm saying it's anti-consumer. And so therefore they should, for the sake of their consumers, choose not to do so. But I'm not saying they must not do so. I'm saying they should. They ought to. There we go. Not there must not. I'm not saying there must not be exclusives. I'm saying there ought not be exclusives.
God, you're bordering on socialism now.
No, socialism would be you must not make exclusives. I'm saying you ought not make exclusives. I'm saying, come on, guys. You're being dicks. Stop it.
No. I can't get with it. I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect, and I admire them for it. I love watching. I've been loving watching Sony having to have the rest of the world pry Spider-Man out of their cold dead hands for movie rights. I love it.
I hate
think
it.
It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I think all of it's beautiful.
I despise it with every fiber of my being. It's like,
it's beautiful.
Hey, look, I'm the best director in the world. I'd like to make a movie. Okay, you have to make it the way we want it. I want to make it the way I want it. Sorry, you can't do it. It's our movie. Ha ha. You're a queer. Go away.
But think about, here's the thing. You would do it because you like actually think about it. You spent all of this money acquiring this thing. All this money, because Sony didn't deny that whole thing because it wasn't the way they wanted. It came down to money. They wanted more money because they spent money on it. They should be able to do whatever the heck they want. If you spent money to acquire a franchise and then you made the franchise, let's be honest, Sony completely put the Spider-Man franchise just threw it into the stratosphere, made it super popular, and they made their money off of it, and they deserve to because they made the right business move.
Okay, yes, no, I'm not saying it's a bad business decision. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. For Sony to go up and say, I'd like to license Spider-Man, make a Spider-Man movie. They'd say, okay, you can make a Spider-Man movie. And then for them to say, also, I don't want anyone else to be able to make Spider-Man movies. I want to be the only person ever for the next however long to be able to make Spider-Man movies. No one else can do it. The people at Marvel who agreed to that, even for money, always, if you don't pick principle over money, you can die in a fire. I hope all those people are eaten alive by fire ants at Marvel who agreed to do that.
No, I can't.
I absolutely think so.
I think the free market reigns, and this isn't a thing about principle. That's just not principle.
It's absolutely principle. It's absolutely principle.
The principle is this: they have a thing. The thing is worth money. They're like, hey, would you like a lot of money for this thing? You know that you spent so much hard time and spent time away from your family to create. What if we gave you an obscene amount of money for it and made you all very, very wealthy in comparison? Yeah. The principle is you made the right move. It's beautiful.
No, that's money over principle. I hate it. I physically no. Hold on. So it shouldn't be illegal. It should not be illegal. The free market should always be allowed to be a free market. Me personally, from a personal perspective, I hate them with every fiber of my being.
But see, that's the thing. Real principle over money, sure. But that's not real principle over money. You made this principle
over money in all things. If you can't be principled in the small things, I don't trust you to be principled in the large things.
That's not a real principle. The principle is they have a good and or service. It is worth money. Someone says, "Hey, I will give you more money than normal so that I'm the only one who can now utilize this good and or service." And you're like, "Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
The reason why I made this good or service."
Yeah, to say you are the only person who can use this service, to say you are the only person who can use this service is inherently anti-consumer, which is not principled. It's a good business decision, but it's not a principled business decision. The best business decision is the one that makes you you or your company the most money. I think we can both agree on that.
Sure.
The most principled business decision is the one that, even if you operate at a slight loss, has the best outcome for your consumers. Can we agree on that?
No, not necessarily.
Why?
For one particular reason. It comes down to how aggressive this hits your consumer. So for instance, if you were buying a thing to create a monopoly and then bastardize it, that's wrong. But Sony did not do that. They didn't grab people by the balls and say, go watch my movie. They sold the tickets at the same price. They sold the DVDs and Blu-rays at the same price. The consumer was taken care of perfectly fine for many, many years. And then Sony still came to a deal. They still did. The problem was people weren't coming at them with the right deal. That's all there was to it. Okay, and that's fine.
Okay,
they handled the consumer perfectly. They treated the consumer great. Think about all the great games and movies we had when Sony had Spider-Man by the balls. The consumer was taken care of beautifully. Okay, I have no problems with it.
So I'm going to say this. I'm not going to continue on specifically about Spider-Man just because I don't know enough about it. Just throw that. I don't have enough information to be able to actually form an argument here.
This sentence was what was funny.
Yeah. So I can't argue about something that I don't have knowledge about. It wouldn't make any sense for me to do so. But I will go to I will go to I think here let's go to Blue Point. Blue Point made a good business decision by remaking remaking Demon Souls.
Yes.
A more principled decision. So here you go. I'm not saying. See, and for a business, obviously, you know, you have to make money sometimes. No, you don't. If I own a business, I would always have. I must be principled. You know, if I'm making money in an unprincipled way, I don't deserve to be making that money. That's how I'm going to say it. If you're not going to be as principled as me in your business, that's your business. There we go. So okay, so here we go. I'm gonna stop all that. Go with the explanation. Here we go. Here's what I'm saying. The business that makes exclusives because it's the best business decision for them at the time to make an exclusive has made a good business decision. And while I disagree with that decision, I can't argue against that decision from a business standpoint because it was a good business decision. The consumer who says, because exclusives are inherently anti-consumer, because you are, by definition of making it exclusive, depriving a consumer of options, that does make it anti-consumer. It's not as good for it is bad for the consumer to have exclusives. It's really good for the company, but it is bad for the consumer. It is an anti-consumer decision. So the consumer who says, "Boy, I sure am glad that this company is making things not to say this company is smart for doing this is different than saying, I sure am happy there are exclusives. Boy, my life is better now that I must either not play certain games or buy 2 systems to play these games. Ha, this is fantastic." Or even worse, the one who says, boy, I sure am glad that person who owns an Xbox can't play the games that I can play on PlayStation. I am so happy that person does not have the options I do. I am so happy that I don't have the options that person does. The consumer who says that is an idiot.
I've got a 2-part answer for you on why I still disagree. Here's the first part. It is nothing can be anti-consumer in a situation in which the consumer has the ability to still go consume. Because they do.
The consumer who can the consumer who can only afford one console does not have the ability to consume exclusives for both consoles.
Well, but here's the thing. The number of people who have only we'll talk about today's day and age specifically. Mm-hmm. The number of people who only have the ability to have not saying it's not the best decision for me to get this, or I shouldn't spend the money on this. The number of people who only have the ability to obtain one and still have the ability to go buy $60 games. We're making that distinction here because I mean that's what we're talking about. We are not talking about people like we were growing up who were very poor, had systems given to us, and only ever bought used games with 1 or 2 or 3 exceptions in our entire teenage life. In this day and age, that is a genuine minority. A genuine one. It really is. I'm not saying the majority of people have to. I'm not saying the majority of people are going to buy 2. I would say that's also a minority. But the consumer has the option, and there are multiple times when people who want both could have easily made the decision to have both if that was important enough to them. So this is still this is not anti-consumer. If it's anti-consumer, if it's like saying, all right, you're 18 years old, you get to pick whether you're gonna play PlayStations or Xboxes, and you never can change again. That's anti-consumer because that's communism.
It's still anti-consumer. And what you just described, by the way, the people.
It's not anti-consumer. It's pro-business. It's not anti-consumer. There is a line there.
There is a line between pro-business and anti-consumer, and this has exclusives crossed the line in anti-consumer. We need to stop, Tyler. We've been at this for almost 2 hours. We got to shut up. we gotta stop. It's an hour and 39 minutes on the recording.
We're gonna just cut this entire last part out.
Yeah, we're gonna cut out everything about the exclusive. You guys aren't gonna hear any of this. Here's what you guys will hear. Bye.